Hello, my friends, and welcome to Season 2 of We the Game Changers. I'm your host, Beth Knox, and today I'm talking with former tech exec and founder of WeRise Wines, Jamila Conley. So as we sip our way through a conversation about your leadership journey and the wonderful disruption of both your career path and the wine industry, I hope we can spotlight the diverse wineries and those winemakers along the way. I'm excited to get to know you more, as well as the stories behind those wines.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here, and this is the first time I'm doing a interactive vodcast, so I'm very excited. It's a first for both of us. Exactly. So let's see how this goes and have some fun.
All right. Well, let's start with the first wine. Tell me about how this wine is disrupting the industry, and then let's get into the backstory.
Yes. So we're going to start with Vital Wines out of Walla Walla, and this is a red blend. And winemaker Ashley Trout, she actually has a for-profit winery called Brook and Bull, and she decided to start Vital Wines. It's a nonprofit winery, and where all of the proceeds go to providing healthcare access for the migrant workers.
Oh, excellent!
And it's one of those that it's such a great mission that I don't remember exactly how many, but many of the wineries in Walla Walla now contribute to this mission. And whether they're contributing grapes, equipment, etc., but now it's become a complete community-based effort.
Oh, what an endeavor.
To keep this, nonprofit winery going. I love the story. And it's one of those that until I got into the wine industry, I never really thought about it that without the people who are working the vineyards and working the fields, we don't have the wine. We wouldn't have the wine. So I love her story, and I thought we'd start off with her. And I also love the wine because it's medium bodied. It has great flavor, and what you're going to smell on this wine is plums, blueberries, and have a little bit of a peppery finish.
That's really nice. So your career has largely been within the tech industry.
Correct.
But I saw that you have a few finance-related credits and you hold a CPA. So as a young adult, what was your outlook on your job prospects and that career path that you chose?
Yeah, so yes, my undergrad is in accounting. And what was interesting because I went into college at 1992. Yes, I'm old. But back then, there was a lot of talk, kind of like today with AI, that, a lot of jobs are going to go away. Technology is on the boom. The internet was just starting to heat up. And I've always been very strong in math. So A lot of my thought was, I'll go into accounting. I was actually working for an accounting firm while I was in school. So I was learning a lot. And it was a very stable profession to choose. And then I have an MBA in information systems because while I was in college, again, the internet was going crazy and I didn't want to miss that wave. I ended up missing it because when I graduated was 2000 when the tech boom, the internet bubble happened.
Yes.
But it was still a very sound decision for where I eventually wanted to take my career.
So you say you learned a lot from an education standpoint. What did you learn about yourself on that journey, on that career path, both in the moment as well as in hindsight?
Yeah, so like in the moment, I remember I moved to Seattle when I was 27, so I would have been in my accounting career at that point for about 4 or 5 years. And I remember having this very crystal clear moment sitting at my desk in the middle of tax season and looking at my higher ups and thinking, I don't want to do this long term. I like having the foundation of accounting, but I wanted to do more, have more impact, and be able to influence the broader picture. And I must have been 28 or 29 at that point when I had that thought. And for me, what I started thinking about was, okay, you have a strong interest in technology, but I have this business background. How can I bridge that gap? So I ended up going into consulting, IT consulting specifically, so that I could learn more around what are the problems that businesses were facing and how can technology help? And then how can I help solve those problems? So for me, what I really learned about myself was I needed more of a big picture, but I wanted to make sure I brought my disciplines together as I moved toward that journey and made that pivot. And in hindsight, I look back and even looking at me being in the wine industry now, it's all become, and we'll talk about this more through our conversation, it's all become about how can I pivot, but use the skills that I have without losing any skills. You can pivot into almost anything. And as long as you're focused on learning, you can continue to grow in a myriad of ways.
You know, it makes me think about my own career as well as the young people that have worked for me throughout my journey as well. And how many times I reminded them that discovering something that you don't want or don't like is actually, I think, more valuable in guiding your path. I remember I was in college and I was doing an internship, paid internship at this. Talk about feeling old. This dates me at General Telephone Electric, GTE. This is back in Muskegon, Michigan, and it was predominantly a male environment. The only women there had administrative jobs, and it was so regimented. You know, we arrived at 9 a.m. Everyone took not me, but everyone took a smoke break at 10:30. And then you'd have lunch at noon, and you'd have another smoke break at 2:30, and then you'd leave. And while ultimately I had some good experiences there, a good professional experience, but I can remember thinking, I can't do this environment, this corporate environment. It just wasn't a good fit for me. And that really informed what became a nonprofit journey my entire career. So I love hearing that about your journey and understanding that bigger picture that was so important for you. So I'm just curious, and I know we'll talk about what it was like to jump from a tech career to where you are now, but how did the jump affect your leadership style? Do you see a correlation with that?
I would say that I have honed my leadership style over many, many years because I was a very young manager. And not to go off topic of your question, but I'm going to go back to something you said of knowing what you don't want can really have a big influence on where you end up going. And when I think about my leadership style, I had a similar experience. And while there's always been mentors and people I've looked up to, I wanted to emulate, there are a couple of examples in my career that I can think about where either they were my direct manager and their philosophy on management did not align to my values. And those things also stuck out to me of that's not the type of leader I want to be.
Right.
And between putting together the leader I wanted to be and learning from the people that I respected and were mentors, also keeping in mind those people that I could point out that's not the leader, has really influenced my leadership style. So to fast forward back to your question, I would say I bring the same principles that I used in my corporate life to my entrepreneurial life. And it has helped me make decisions around, like when I was going into this, I would have people say like, oh, you're going to be a small business. You don't have to pay benefits. I absolutely need to pay benefits because I want to build a culture where people feel safe and seen and cared for. So having that strong culture matters. Having a mission around my business that people can align to matters. And so to me, my leadership style hasn't changed, but it has evolved into how do I talk to a different set of people, a different set of stakeholders and community, and where are things that are going to resonate and where are the places that I don't know what I don't know, but how do I bring in the community to help me learn and making sure that what I'm projecting lands.
Right. I think it's such a good reminder for all of us, the value in and pulling yourself back and having that bigger picture view. What do I like? What do I don't like? What is aligning? What isn't? Because we can get caught in, can't see the forest for the trees moment. So I think that is such a valuable reminder for all. We can do this throughout our entire career.
Exactly.
And take those moments. So I want to go back to a quote that you said to Seattle Magazine that I think is really profound. You said, "Think horizontally. So many times we get stuck in our silo and see the only path as up. When we do this, we limit both our potential and sometimes our sanity when that promotion isn't coming. A mentor taught me the value of looking at my career as a learning journey. This concept forced me to think beyond my current role and function. At the time, I was a vice president in IT, and I thought I would probably need to leave the company. The traditional upward path was to CIO, and that job wasn't going to open anytime soon. That was 6 years ago. Since then, I've built our first mergers and acquisition integration function, implemented our business transformation office, and now lead our global talent acquisition team." So that quote was in reference to your 12 years at F5. Horizontal thinking really came into play when upward was an unlikely option. So you got great advice, I understand, from a mentor, but can you share a bit of the actual journey you went on how you either pitched yourself for different roles and what interviewing was like, what skills you fortified, why you chose to move from finance to IT to talent acquisition? I know that's a lot, but maybe just talk about this horizontal thinking.
Yeah, and so something else that particular mentor also taught me was the value of what I call the learning journey. And so to answer your question of what did interviewing look like, how did I pitch myself, I actually don't look at it that way. And what that taught me, besides just pushing me out of my comfort zone, I'll just never forget the conversation, because he was like, he had said to me, "Well, what else do you want to do?" And I remember just having that answer of, "Well, I'm VP in IT, so I like my job right now. It's challenging, and there's nowhere for me to go right now." So, and he was the one that was like, "Well, what if you got out into the business? What if you did something?" And I remember thinking, I have no idea what I would do.
Right.
And what he tasked me with was, "I want you to do something. Just go out and have some conversations. This isn't about a role or anything. Just go have some conversations. See what sits with you." And I have to say, that's probably one of the single best pieces of advice that I have ever gotten, because I wasn't prepared for it, but it allowed me. So when you talk about pitching, I didn't have to pitch myself, because one, I was just having conversations with leaders and understanding their business functions a bit more. And like he said, trying to figure out what sounds interesting. So the M&A role, what's interesting about it is that we had a new head of strategy coming in. He wanted to build this integration office. I didn't even really know what an integration office was. And I set up 30 minutes with him just to talk about, tell me your vision, tell me more. And as he explained it, he was like, I'm going to need somebody to lead this. And he was like, let me know if you're interested. And I was like, oh, I wasn't thinking. And I remember telling him, I was like, I wasn't thinking about myself, but I have some other people that I can definitely send your way. And then he came back, we had another meeting. He was like, no, I've seen, your presentations to the C-suite. I like the way you work. I think you could be good in this role. And those types of conversations, and one of the things I found, and especially at the senior leader level, is that a lot of the roles that you get into aren't always going to be roles that are on a, it's just like this role is open to apply for. A lot of at times it's because people get to know you. They understand how you think. They start to understand what you're good at. And then a role will be created because it's like, hey, we have this gap and we think you can fill it. So a lot of my advice to people that I mentor is starting with, what do you want to learn next? And to me, it's like that horizontal thinking and starting to think about what you want to learn next versus what's that next position in the same thing you're doing, like I have learned so much about just the operational rigor of a company from horizontal thinking than I ever would have gotten, even if I left to take a CIO role somewhere.
Right.
That I learned so much more. I've grown personally and professionally from from doing these roles, and moving from the building an integration office to building the transformation office, and then going into HR. Again, it was my relationship with the CHRO, having conversations, thinking about what might I want to do next. And one of the things I found was, well, I have the finance background, I have IT background. Because of M&A, I have like all the business pieces. I didn't really have that HR piece.
Sure.
And where I was going in my career was trying to set myself up of how do I become a COO in my next role.
Okay.
And so I still had, a goal in mind, but you start putting the pieces together of like, how can you think even bigger than what you originally thought you could do if you just can continue to climb the vertical ladder?
Well, and it's so much more satisfying or gratifying, perhaps, to think about, rather than that aspirational, I just need to climb the ladder,
Right.
Without I guess a desire for, like, what do I want to get out of that? And instead looking at it more holistically.
Right.
I think that's it's so liberating to come at it from that perspective.
Exactly. Well, and you're truly owning your career.
Right.
Versus trying to prove yourself. It actually puts you in the driver's seat. Right. And that's one of the biggest things that I learned from that when I step back and reflect of like, I'm truly in the driver's seat for my own career.
And I think oftentimes, especially young professionals that are maybe coming up on midpoint of their career, it feels like there's I have to have this title, or I have to have this next thing in order to whatever, as opposed to what do I want to learn. So I really love that story. So let's move ourselves into wine number 2. Tell us about our next wine and the origin story, which I understand has a great message about making choices for our lives.
Yes. So our next wine is from Frechette Winery, out of Red Mountain, and we are having her Cab Franc. And Shay Frechette, there's Shay and Greg Frechette. I love their story, and I actually was a club member of theirs before I started. So Shay was one of the people I reached out to first when I started thinking about WeRise. But Shay and Greg's story is so adorable. They were living in California. They wanted to start a family, and they decided, well, we're going to start a family. We should go be around family. And Greg is from Eastern Washington. Shay is from South Carolina. And as they were thinking about it, they flipped the coin. And and I believe it landed on heads. I don't quite remember that piece of it. And I remember Shay was just like, is this the trick? Because they were going to Washington. And as they were thinking about, well, when we get to Washington, what should we do? And it's like, and they both had corporate jobs, and they could try to find other corporate jobs, but they decided, let's just do something completely different. And they were drinking wine. As they were having this conversation, they looked at each other and they're just like, well, we really enjoy wine, and we're moving, your family's in wine country. What if we started a winery?
That's amazing.
And they took that leap, and they make some fantastic wines. Now they make a beautiful Cab Franc.
Ooh, that's lovely.
Yes. Just a lovely amount of body. And again, you can taste a bit of dark cherry, blueberries in there. And yeah, their wines are just fantastic.
I think we mentioned your involvement in leadership with the International Women's Forum. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to us about when did you get involved with that? Maybe tell us even a little bit about it. I'm curious to hear how that has shaped your perspective, being part of that organization.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So we have limited time. So number one, the International Women's Forum is a organization of over 7,000 C-suite leaders, women leaders, from around the globe. And I joined the forum back in 2020. So they were doing all virtual format back then. But one of the things that's really special about the forum is a lot of their programming, they really focus on, while they'll have broader programming, they would do, and like I said, during the pandemic, it takes a lot to pull off. How do you connect women? So the Washington Forum, they do these smaller connects of just like 5 to 6 women. And you get to really connect and have some really deep conversations and really foster those relationships. And I thought it was so well done during the pandemic. So I joined in 2020, and then in 2021, they also have what's called the fellowship program, where they bring 30 to 40 women who are about 5 to 7 years away from the C-suite together for a year-long program. And it's all about preparing you for the C-suite. And so since there are our CHRO and a couple of other people were members from F5, when we learned about the fellows program, we were thinking, well, who could we send? And we were giving all these candidates, but then unbeknownst to me, my CHRO, my CEO, came back and said, you know what, we want to send you.
Wow.
And it was so life-changing, and really one of the things that I attribute to why I'm even here today with WeRise, because that program, besides connecting me to leaders in my peer group from several different industries across the world that I'm still very connected to, it also took us through this journey of really unlocking how are we holding ourselves back, whether it's confidence, whether it's not seeing our own transferable skills, or where we have fear. Like for me, at the time that I was going through the program, I was also going through this phase of being extremely burned out, but so terrified of leaving my job. And leaving because of uncertainty of like, can I do this? Will I still be okay? And now I look back at that and I just think, why did I ever feel that way? But there's so much fear locked up in me. And this program just did so much to unlock that, so that then I could start thinking about what risk can I take? And I know I'll be okay. So IWF has just been game changing for me and for so many of the women that I went through the program with, and women that I get to know and help get through the next program. That it's hard to explain, but it's just such a beautiful program. And the women really support each other across the country, across the globe, that I could land in London and make a call, and I could, have somebody there to support, go have drinks, have lunch, whatever. It's just like, it's a beautiful organization.
That's incredible. I think finding an organization, however you can, whether it's WISE, Women in Sports and Events, or whatever the organization, right. I think that kind of a community is something that brings such value to our careers professionally as well as personally. And you mentioned, you talked about that confidence piece and the opposite of it with fear. It's interesting because that is the theme of our Women in Leadership Breakfast, cultivating confidence, everything from body language, how do we convey confidence through our body language or not, to imposter syndrome and all of those things that can get in the way. So it's a very relevant topic right now, especially for women as we are gaining more momentum in the professional world.
Yeah. And one of the things I'll just quickly say that was so interesting, especially going into the cohort, they present everyone's bios. And you're reading these bios of people that is just like, did they mean to select me? Because everyone is so accomplished. And it was so interesting that as we met each other, we were all having that same thought. And I feel that as women in general, we all do that. And how do we break that down to reach our full potential? That, like you said, no matter what the organization, it's finding that community that's going to help prop you up and help break down those imposter narratives that we tell ourselves.
Right.
Like, this world could be like Oh my gosh, you know.
I couldn't agree more. And that narrative, not only is it destructive to a productive pathway, but it takes up energy. It takes up valuable energy that we could be putting toward something that is, even if we're going into it feeling uncertainty or questioning ourselves, just pushing that narrative aside and going for it anyway.
Exactly.
Then you're using it productively.
Exactly.
So, Jamila, so many of us get comfortable in the routine of life, even to a point where we feel, I love this, stuck in our own stuckness.
Yes.
No longer happy with our job or an industry or a component of life. And we too often kind of sit in that. Now, you went against the grain by leaving an industry that you had excelled at for over 20 years to start your own business in a field about as far removed as you can get from the tech industry. Now, talk to me about the spark that led you to leaving corporate America and becoming the founder of a wine bar.
Yes, I love telling this story because, like I said, I was already in a place where coming out of the pandemic, I was burnt out and I knew I wanted something new. I didn't think that wine was going to be that something new. But I've always loved wine, and I've always been that friend that you go out to dinner and people are passing the wine menu to me of like, let's pick the wine. And I've had friends, make the comment of, why don't you do something in wine? It's like, why would I do that? Like, I don't understand. But what happened was when I was in that period of just, and I'll call it stuckness, that the things I knew I wanted to do was drive impact in a meaningful way. And especially with what happened during the pandemic with George Floyd and people starting to wake up and think about how do we all take some collective responsibility to make this a better world. And for me, that was also top of my mind of like, I like doing M&A, but I started thinking, well, is there a way I could be further up the funnel to understand where the dollar's going? And, just starting exploring, going on my learning journey.
Yes.
Figuring out what could that impact look like. And I want it to be real. And I went to a wine dinner, and it was a celebration of Black women in wine. And there were, I think, 8 or 9 winemakers there, all Black women from various places across the U.S., and I remember being blown away. It was that thing of seeing people who look like you, doing something that you either don't really think about diversity in wine, you just think is it good or not.
Right.
And then 2, I got interested and wanted to learn their story. So as I was tasting their wines, I was asking questions of how long have you been doing this? What were you doing before? And most of them had left corporate America. Like Shay was there, Shay Frechette. And, and it's just like, and I even asked Shay because I realized I didn't know enough about her background. And it's like, oh, used to be a corporate trainer. Another woman was there. She was a lawyer. And it's like, wait, I'm a professional. I like wine. Is there something here I could do? But that night really started sparking for me, what could this look like if I wanted to take this seriously? And 2, as a intentional person, the fact that there are winemakers that look like me and I didn't know existed, how do other people know? And I'm into wine and I go wine tasting that if I don't know, then the people that don't go wine tasting but like wine, how are they going to find out about you? Yeah. And so I basically put on my learning journey hat and started asking questions, understanding the gaps in the market, understanding how hard it is for smaller wineries to get into distribution. And that got me thinking about my professional network. Is there a way that I could work with companies and consumers to learn about this? And where I landed was, well, as a step 1, downtown is suffering. Could I be a small part of the revitalization of downtown? And opening a wine bar could be a great way to bring the wine to where the people are. So where WeRise is located, in Belltown, a block away from Pike Place Market, across from Moore Theater.
Great proximity.
I want it to be somewhere where, how can I get a lot of eyeballs on this wine and start educating people? And which is why the storytelling about the winemakers is so important, because I also want people to resonate. And what I wanted to resonate with people, is that winemakers are just like you and me. That they had other lives, careers. Some of them are working alongside, their professional career and making wine. That is not always a multi-generational, winery that has, these long roots, but there's smaller wineries out here, and people are pouring their hearts into their passion, and they're making some fantastic wines. And how can I help them be seen while building my own business?
So I'm curious, how do you tell those stories in the wine bar? Is it just as you're pouring, or is there another mechanism that you're sharing those stories?
So we do it in about 3 different ways. The one thing we do every month is we select a winemaker to highlight. We write a blog on them. We post it through all of our social media channels, and it's on our website. 2, we choose 2 wineries to feature in the bar so that we can put a spotlight on those wines. And then 3, yes, my staff is trained that as they're pouring the wine, even if it's as small as just saying, this is a woman-owned wine out of Walla Walla, Washington, and on our menus, that all the wines are listed by what country or state they're from, what diversity they are. And the number of people, and what warms my heart is that reaction I had at that dinner several years ago is when people have that reaction of, oh my gosh, I didn't know there were so many, women-owned wines. Like, this is fantastic. Right. And it's just like getting that spark of people just like feeling like, oh, I just connected with something that I didn't know I could be supporting, and I could be supporting more intentionally.
Well, and like you mentioned earlier, I think there's a lot of us that are guilty of handing the wine list to people like yourself. And so having the highlights, the spotlights in the wine bar, it allows the consumer to say, oh, that aligns, even if it is, subconscious feeling of, oh, woman owned, that's the one I want to try. So I love that. It kind of helps guide us in a suggestive way on some level, but in a really productive way in others. So has the wine industry as a whole, I'm generalizing here, has it pushed back on this having corporate individuals suddenly say, I'm going to be a winemaker? Have you felt any of that pushback, or has it been more welcoming and inclusive?
I would say it's been very welcoming and inclusive. And the wine industry in general, at least here in Washington, has, it's just like, it's truly a community, and people are very excited, both around what WeRise is doing, but then just supporting each other. Right. So, and that's something that I have said since I've, been in the industry, because again, I came with my own imposter syndrome of like, oh my gosh, what is this going to be like? And instead, it's been so much of happy to help. What do you need? It goes
back to that community that we talked about. Right?
Exactly. So I haven't received much pushback.
So it feels very romantic to open a wine bar. What skills that transferred from your corporate life to running and operating a wine bar?
Yeah. So I would say, one, there's been several. But one, just understanding kind of operationally, what do you need to think about? How do you need to think about like certain costs, whether it's labor costs, inventory costs, and setting and having a smart framework of how you're going to move through a lot of those business side issues is really key of, understanding a P&L. And a lot of those things that can be lost for some businesses.
Sure.
I will say that I have been slightly appalled sometimes when I've talked to some small businesses and they'll say, oh, we don't take inventory. And it's just like, how do you operate without knowing your food costs or without knowing your beverage costs? So, those types of things are very transferable. But then also being able to navigate what can be very complex structures when you think about local government, county government, and being able to have a network of people behind you that you can call on when you get stuck. That having I can't say enough about having that professional network, because I have definitely had to use it more than a couple of times. That has come into play. And then I think the third thing is just understanding the different facets of a business, whether it be marketing, accounting, sales, and putting on those different hats and understanding, okay, how do we need to pivot? How do you push people? And how do you build a culture? Like all of those things, bringing those from my corporate life into my entrepreneurial life has been very key for me.
When you put it that way, it seems so natural to transfer those skills. I mean, it's really less about the what you're doing and instead how and the knowledge that you bring to it. And you mentioned the network, and I think that's one of my greatest learnings in my professional career is kind of getting over the idea that success means I did it by myself. Right. That because I used to think that if I have to ask for help, I must be a failure. I must not be doing it right. And kind of getting over that it's a bit of an imposter syndrome itself, and using the network, who is so happy to support all of us, and making it easier on ourselves. Right. I was making it way harder on myself than I had to. So let's go to our next wine and try this one. So we're on wine number 3.
Yes, wine number 3.
How are they changing the game?
Remy Wines. So Remy Drabkin, she's out of Oregon, out of McMinnville. She actually used to be the mayor of McMinnville up until last November. And she's all about sustainability. So I wanted to put her wines in here for us to taste, because both from sustainability of her vineyards, and making very low intervention wines. She makes fantastic wines. She loves to experiment with different grape varietals. She's amazing. But then also just her facilities, all the way down to like the type of concrete she uses. Wow. When she thinks about sustainability and reusing, she's extremely intentional, and she makes amazing wine. So definitely love introducing people to her wine. So we're having her Super Tuscan, which is, you're going to taste mixed berries in here. It's going to have a very smooth and long finish. It's just a delicious and fantastic wine. Oh, that is delicious. I love the tannins in that. So let's go back to, we enjoy this. Your business name, WeRise Wines, is a play on the Maya Angelou's Still I Rise poem. And you've said that the we is a core component of that. Can you tell more about that? What went into that name? Yeah. So again, being a very intentional person, and as I thought about the mission and what I was looking to do, I wanted to make sure that the name was going to be something that spoke to who we are and what we were doing. And my wife and I, we were just brainstorming on, okay, she was like, what about something with rise? You're helping wineries rise up. Lifting them. And I was like, oh, I really like that. And I have to give her the credit, because she was like, it could be a play off of the Maya Angelou poem. I was like, ooh, I really like that. I was like, it's just like, maybe we change it to WeRise, because, this is about community. This is about building an inclusive business. This is about helping other smaller wineries be seen. And it's something that can apply to almost any of the business.
Sure.
And so whether it's who and how I'm hiring, other vendors that we partner with, that it all becomes about the togetherness of us all. And so the we part really, really complemented that. And what's funny now is that I see WeRise everywhere in different things.
Yes, but it feels a little like rising tides lift all
Yeah.
boats. That's what it really comes to mind for me, and it's such another inclusive element of what you're doing here. Now, had you seen another wine bar with a similar mission as you? What inspired you to open a wine bar?
So, like I said, and this kind of goes back to how I was thinking about from a business perspective, was I need to build the brand, and for what I wanted to do in the mission, that opening a wine bar seemed to be the smartest and easiest way to build the brand, for people to understand our mission and to get accustomed to what we were doing, so that anything else that I wanted to do, whether it be getting into distribution or doing different models, that the wine bar to me was the best way to start building that brand. And so that's really what, as I was going through and thinking about my business plan and the different phases of that plan, the wine bar became the first thing for me. And then to go back to your question, no, I didn't know of anyone doing anything similar at the time. But as I was going through this process of getting open, I did end up meeting someone, Alyssa Lyle, that she owns Lucy's Bottle Shop in Magnolia. We opened around the same time, had a similar mission. And I never forget when we first met, because she's also a chef. So I was introduced to her as a chef that, could potentially, as a connection, since I was opening a kitchen, and, I ended up working with her, and she helped me through the whole process of building out the kitchen at WeRise. But she told me about what she was doing. It's like, oh, we have similar business models. And I never forget that first night we were talking, it's just like, do you see this as competition? I was like, absolutely not. I was like, there's not enough people doing what we're trying to do. So it's just like, I see it as support and community. And she felt the same way. And we're really good friends now because of that. And, and all of it, all it's doing is like it continuing to help wineries that don't get enough exposure get more exposure, and to help people think intentionally. So, but yeah, she's the other person that I know who's doing something similar.
Okay. So you've also talked a lot in this conversation about highlighting the stories of these underrepresented winemakers. Why do you think storytelling is so important in this endeavor of yours?
Yeah, and I think I've touched on it a little bit, but I think that it's just really important so that communities, and especially communities of color that traditionally feel left out of certain luxuries, and wine can be seen as a luxury. And, and it's not that people don't enjoy wine, but they feel that, oh, going to wine country, that's not for me. And even if it's not a community of color, you have a lot of people that are just like, I wouldn't even know where to start.
Sure.
And so the storytelling both helps connect people to the humanness of the winemaker, but it also gives people a place to start that is not pretentious. And one of the things that when we were opening WeRise, and that we told the staff that I don't want my staff standing over, and even as someone who enjoys wine, it's been plenty of times I've been wine tasting, and you have somebody standing over your table telling you about the grapes and the dirt and, the slope that the grapes were planted, and you're just sitting there like, yeah, just want to drink my wine.
Back a little
exactly.
bit.
And it's just like, that's not engaging. And while it's fascinating, if you're into wine, and especially if you're a winemaker and you want to tell people these details, it's not what captures people, and it actually can help. It can actually make people feel left out, because if you are, and there's a lot of people like this, is of like, I know I like red wine, but I don't know any of the grapes or any of this other stuff.
Right.
that if that's where you're starting, and then someone's telling you about, the north facing slope, or, it's just like it's such a big disconnect. But when you're able to tell more of the story that's going to connect with that person, that, again, they may not remember the grape, but they'll remember that story, and they'll come back and it's
right.
like, I had a fantastic wine. And I've had this happen to me several times. There's a place in Orchids 2 years ago that I went, and it was before WeRise was open, but I was working on it. I talked to the sommelier and I was like, do you have any wines from, women? I was telling him my mission. He's like, we have a secret menu. He's like, I have some wines I want to bring out for you.
Oh, I love it.
And the one that I ended up getting, like, I couldn't tell you what I drank, but what I remember was it was a matriarch of her family, Italian, and she rebelled during the...
Of course you remember those details,
exactly.
right?
But it's like, that's what I remember. And when I go back to that restaurant, that's what I'll say. It's like, you gave me this wine, and it was from this woman matriarch. She was like the mother of this family, and she rebelled during the Second World War, and it was a fantastic wine. And he'll remember that.
Oh, yes.
So,
he'll know exactly.
And to me,
what
it's like, that's
about.
why storytelling is important, because you're not just educating people, but like I said, you're connecting people to something that they'll remember that.
It's real and it's relevant.
Exactly.
To them, right?
Exactly. And it's inclusive, because it makes you feel like, oh, I can go back in here and ask for this, and I don't have to worry about, am I mispronouncing a grape or something else? That it becomes nothing about that, except that this is what I enjoyed, and I remember what you told me. So, and to me, that's why it's important.
So I want to shift gears just a little bit to another reference that I know you have made before about creating generational wealth through your company, which generational wealth has been historically challenging for minority communities. Mm-hmm. How is your business model helping to create opportunities for generational wealth?
Yeah, and for me, the way I think about it, and it's just like, and we're a small cog in a big wheel, but still a cog. But still a cog.
I love that.
And for me, when I think about this, is that a lot of the wineries that you think about that have, families that have been a part of the business for years and continues to be passed on, and how they get is because they're known, and then they may get sold later or whatever, but that's how they build their wealth. But if these wineries, if no one ever learns about them, the winery's going to live and die with the people who started them. So for me, again, with just even starting the wine bar, having a wine club, the more that I can expose these wineries to my consumers, and the more WeRise continues to take off and have that flywheel effect, that then these wineries have a chance to grow. Because like one of the catch-22s that I found that a lot of small wineries fall into is they don't get into distribution because they don't make enough cases of wine.
Sure.
And so if you don't make enough cases of wine, then you're self-distributing and trying to make, or it's the price point that wholesalers, distributors want, that the wineries are paying for everything in this, one bottle, one glass to sell it. And to me, if I can help them get more exposure, that then helps them have to have more, create more cases of wine, also helping to get their name out there. So other places like Lucy's Bottle Shop and other restaurants that are trying to be intentional with their wine menus, that if we can get them that exposure, then they can, it's like they can get out of that catch-22, and then they can get distributed more, and then it can be that family business that actually carries on.
Sure.
So to me, that's how I think about it. To start that generational wealth, you have to start somewhere, but someone has to be willing to help you get there. And like I said, I'm one cog in a big wheel, but then hopefully other cogs start catching on, and that generational wealth, speaks for itself. And, it's like, and that's part of my goal and aim. And it's just like, they say, shoot for the moon, you might hit a star. Like,
right. That's the
yeah.
same
And so I
concept.
want to put a big, bold statement out there, but let's all do this.
And it's inspiring. If I'm the recipient of that generosity to help me be successful, it gives me more confidence. If I have more confidence, I'm going to maybe take some more risks and grow, and then I'm going to help the next person. So
Right.
you really are you're that great trigger for a lot of good things. And in the spirit of that inclusive mentality that you have, you also have a similar approach to your patrons that come into
Right.
the wine bar. Tell me about that come as you are mentality that you have for them.
Yeah. And like for me, I really wanted to have a place that was going to be inclusive for all and wasn't pretentious, but could still be a great, beautiful space. And we see that, like I said, we've had people that come in and they're like, I really don't know anything about wine. Tell me where to start. And we will start with, well, let me know, like, do you like sweet? Do you like dry? And
guide them through
and we
that.
kind of guide them through that. And, we'll have people that come in. And one of my personal favorites is when you have the people that might say, I like white, but I hate Chardonnay. So, like,
Yes,
tell me,
we've all heard
like,
that.
and then that becomes a challenge for us of like, okay, I hear you. You don't like Chardonnay, but let me just give you a taste of this. And, it's like, we'll do a few tastes and it's like, oh, that's actually really nice. And, and changing people's minds in that way. And so it's been fun and so relaxed because people are able to come in and we meet them wherever they are.
That's awesome.
And we get so many reviews around, we love how relaxed and inclusive this space is. And, and to me, that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted people to be able to just feel comfortable in their own skin and feel welcomed. And every person that walks through the door, we always say, welcome in. And, we greet guests coming out, we greet them leaving. And, and it's just like making it feel as much as like coming into your own living room as possible is kind of our aim.
And to that point, I understand you even do events
Yes.
at the wine bar. Talk to me about what kinds of events and who are you trying to reach when you do that?
So yes, we do a number of events, and I always like to say it's just like, this has been a year of throwing spaghetti at the wall, seeing what sticks, what
try.
works, and, and engaging the community. And so we have our standing Wine Down Wednesdays. And so we do, we originally called it the Introverts Happy Hour, but it's Silent Book Club. And, and it's just like, and people love that. They come in with their book, they have their glass of wine, and, it's like,
I love that.
and they just, I never forget, there was this one time that, because we have this couch, and this girl came in, she had her book, she was like curled up on the couch, and I was just like, oh, this is what it's about.
Yes.
It's just like, you just feel comfortable that no one's going to be like, why are you here?
Yeah.
But to answer your question of the people that we're targeting, it's like we target a balance of both tourists for where we are, but also it was important to me to also target people who are living downtown as well as the people who are working downtown. I remember having this experience when I was still working before I started WeRise, that I was early for a dinner or an event, and I thought, well, where could I go? I wish there was just like a wine bar where I could go sit and feel comfortable, not go into a restaurant that has a bar where you feel like, oh, I have to be here for a purpose. And to me, that's something that stuck with me as I was designing WeRise, where we have both table seating as you would expect, but also soft seating that you can sit by yourself and just feel like, okay, I don't feel out of place here, or that I have to wait, or,
Like you're
I'm
trying to
waiting for
turn the
someone.
table.
Exactly.
Time to move on.
So that, those little details were really important. And then having events that cater to different groups. Like we did a singles game night for over 30, and we also had a DJ that night, and the tables were packed and people were, really engaging in the game. So we think about who are we trying to attract and how are we attracting those different communities. So it's not a one size fits all model. And then one of the other things that we do is during the Heritage Months, really aligning to those communities and leaning into those communities, whether it's Black History Month, Women's History Month, Pride Month, etc. So we cater our events to what's going on and what are we celebrating around diversity in particular months as well.
I love that. Okay, so we need to move on to wine number 4. Tell us about this wine.
Yes, so we're drinking Envisioning wine from Nelly Som is the winemaker.
Say her name again.
Nelly Som.
Okay.
So she lives in Gig Harbor.
Okay.
She's Kenyan. And one of the things I love about Nelly's story is that she is kind of the consummate entrepreneur. She sees a gap, she will just fill it. So she's had a healthcare business, she has a catering business, and now she has a wine business, because one of the things she found is that in her catering business, she makes a lot of Kenyan food.
Okay.
And it can be on the spicier side. And she was getting frustrated with the fact that she couldn't find wines that paired well with the African foods. So she started learning about winemaking and making wines that pair well with spicier foods, spicier African foods. And she's just a treat and a delight. We actually did a wine pairing with her food, with her wines and her foods, a whole dinner in our private room. And it was fantastic. But yes.
Talk about solving your own problem.
Yes, exactly. So it's nothing like a woman that just takes the problem head on. So Nelly is one of those people. But we are drinking her Go-Go Merlot. And this is definitely full-bodied and very dry. And yeah, and it's a delicious wine.
I've listened to the episode that you were on, the Seattle City Makers podcast with John Scholes from the Downtown Seattle Association. And that was shortly before you launched WeRise Wines. And then just last week, you were recognized by Intentionalist, another partner of the Seattle Sports Commission, as Rookie of the Year Award finalist. And now you're launching your own wine label, which is incredible. So first of all, congratulations on all of those milestones. Wow, adding a wine label to your plate. Why did you choose to jump into that one amongst all the other things you're doing right now?
Yeah, maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. No, that's always been part of the plan. And again, it's more around the extension of the brand and how I can be, again, a bit more intentional around exposure to the brand. And actually on the label, it talks about our mission and what we're doing, and has a QR code that then will take you back to the website so that you learn about the wine bar, our broader mission.
Telling your story.
Exactly. It tells our story and then ultimately brings people back to experience all of the diverse wineries that we support. So it was always part of the plan. I did it a little sooner than I thought I was going to do it. I thought I would do it in year 2, but so far it's we're doing our official launch party.
Exciting.
Exactly. So this month, so it's it's very exciting, and it's already been really well received. And so I'm excited to see where I can take this, because I believe with the private label, that is also going to be a place that I am able to go even deeper in the corporate communities of working with companies and really getting into more of like corporate gifting and things like that. Love that. Yes, there's a whole plan behind, it's just like, what do they say? The devil's in the details, but it's just like there's magic behind the madness.
I love that. Well, as I listen to you talk about this, one of the other panels at our Women in Leadership breakfast is getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Now, you have certainly done that
Yes.
in a number of areas. How do you get yourself in that mindset to lean into being uncomfortable?
I feel like it's almost like an addiction at this point.
Oh, I love that.
And after kind of like, if we rewind back to, I guess that was like 2018, when my mentor had told me about kind of like thinking horizontally, that when I first went into that M&A role, I remember being so terrified of, I'm not an M&A expert, but I'm a learner. So it's just like I started like using my network. Anyone who did M&A, started my own self-learning. But after doing that, from being terrified to then realizing, I remember I told myself, well, we don't have an integration office now. So the only place to go is up. So
Right.
how bad could it be? And the framework and everything that we built went really well. And so I think learning from that, of like, when you put yourself in the mind frame of, one, there's only one place to go, is up. Like, even if you fail, you learn something. Even if this doesn't work out, you still learn something. So that's the mindset I approach things with. And then two, our CEO at F5, he once said that, if you're not a little scared every day coming into work, then you're in your comfort zone. Like, you need to be a little scared every day.
Right.
And to me, it's just like, when he said that, I just remember thinking, that is so true. And that's what I've been feeling in a lot of these roles, is that I'm doing something, I'm taking a risk. And like I said, it almost becomes addictive because you're constantly challenging yourself.
Right.
And so it doesn't become about the competition or anything else. It's about, what do I need to learn to make this successful? And while it gets really uncomfortable sometimes when it's like, when things aren't working out, but again, to me, that's more of the challenge of like, okay, how do I face this challenge now? And so, like I said, it's just like, so I feel like I'm constantly kind of chasing, okay, how do I solve this? I'm smart enough to solve this. Let me figure this out. So,
Well, it's a sign of growth too. If you're uncomfortable and taking some risks, then you're progressing. If you're comfortable, then you're probably just being stagnant,
right,
and not
exactly.
growing. So, Jamila, of course, the Seattle Sports Commission. It would be remiss if I didn't bring it back to sports in some way. Is there a connection to sports in your life and this career path that you've been on?
So, yes, both is, I'm generally a pretty active person, and I used to be big into running before, got old and my knee blew out, and also big into cycling. So it's like, I love sports. And when I first moved here, the Storm was just getting started and Sue Bird was a rookie. And so I used to go to games all the time. So yes, I love sports. And for me, yes, I also am looking and exploring with several of specifically the women's sports here in Seattle, of what can we do together. And that's one of the things that I love about what I'm doing right now, because it doesn't have to be a perfect alignment to figure out how we can collaborate. So Julie Prentice, who works with the Seawolves, and she's also an IWF member. And so we're going to kind of talk and just like, are there things that we can do? Maddie McNamara.
Yes, Maddie McNamara. She used to work for the Seattle Sports Commission.
So, it's like, I met her through Visit Seattle, and now she's with the Women's Hockey League.
Yes, PWHL.
And, so we're going to, we're actually right now trading messages about having a conversation to see what kind of collaboration can happen there. So I'm actually really excited to see how the mission of WeRise and supporting the women's sports in Seattle, if there's a way that, there's areas where we can work together. So yes, it is actually a high priority on my list.
I love that. I think it's a natural connection. So that's, I think it opens up so many more opportunities. Let's dive into our fifth and final taste of wine. You're going to tell us about that, and then I have a couple of game changer quick questions that I'm going to ask you.
Okay. Well, so we're drinking E3 2022 Malbec. So
I love
E3,
Malbec.
and so I thought I'd start our wine tasting and end our wine tasting with nonprofits.
Okay.
So E3 is a nonprofit wine out of Woodinville, and they're winemakers from DeLille that started this label as a nonprofit winery where they make 3 different wines and it serves 3 different communities. So the Malbec specifically also serves the Hispanic community and to help with both healthcare access and just anything in general that the Hispanic community needs. The other 2 labels, they make a Pride Rosé that supports the LGBTQ community, and then they make a Riesling that supports the Black community. So I love finding nonprofit wineries that are helping in ways that, again, you don't always hear about. In their mission, the E3 is elevate, educate, and evolve. So, like I said, I love presenting nonprofit wineries that are doing things intentionally to help communities. I love their Malbec.
This is delicious, Malbec.
Yeah, you can taste the dark berries, and it's just like a hint of cocoa, or like cocoa tobacco. Sounds weird to say tobacco, so in the flavor profile.
Yeah, no, it's really good. So, all right, Jamila, I'm going to ask you our final 2 questions here. So, at the kind of the core of being a game changer means you're being disruptive. Mm-hmm. And being a disruptor is not easy. You are swimming upstream. You are pushing the boulder. What advice would you give someone who finds himself in that position where they feel like they are swimming upstream? How would you help guide them to keep pushing?
Yeah, I think my advice because I definitely feel that, and as an entrepreneur, it is not for the faint of heart.
Right.
But if you have set out with a vision and a value set that you truly believe in, you have to remember that everyone isn't always going to believe in that vision, or sometimes even your value set, but you can't depend on external focuses or external validation. It has to be your passion. And it goes back to a little bit of what we were talking about earlier of knowing what you're good at, knowing what you're passionate about, and understanding the impact that you want to drive and letting that guide you.
Yeah.
Because if you're not doing it because you feel like you have the skills and you have the passion, then you're not going to have the focus to move forward. Right. Because energy follows focus. And so that you can't be swayed easily, you have to know you're super passionate about this and you have what it takes to move forward. Like, to me, it's just like, that's what you have to hold on right. to make that difference. It can't be because someone else said, "Oh, this will be a good idea."
Sure. Because that will peter out.
Exactly.
So, is there someone in your life who was that game changer for you, made a difference either professionally or personally?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I guess I think about this. I'm going to go a little bit out of the box on this one and think about 4 different people. I'm going to leave a lot of people out, so I'm sorry, but one, my parents.
Okay.
Like,
sure.
I remember when I was, I don't know, probably 8, my mom was just like, can't isn't in your vocabulary.
Love that.
And, the sky's the limit. Like, you can, if you put your mind to it, you can do it. And at 51, I still remember those words and think, and it's just like, and that's part of when things get hard. I remember those words.
Yeah.
To my 8th grade teacher, who I'm still in touch with this day.
Love that.
I'd never forget when I graduated college. She was at my graduation and she told me, always walk with your shoulders back and your head high. Because, it's like I'm tall and I was shy that you start to make yourself shrink.
Right.
And again, that's something that has stood with me of walk with your shoulders back, be proud of who you are. And so, and like I said, there's been a lot of people in between that has helped me, but those are the things that keep me grounded.
Right.
But then on the other side, when I think about these pillars, and these are people I haven't met, but that I just respect so much, is Oprah. Being the first Black billionaire, and just how humble and grounded. And there's pieces and small things she has said throughout her career that I hold on to as a business person. I was saying this to my cousin last week who was visiting. I was just like, oh, I sign all my checks. Like, that's something Oprah said a long time ago.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're a business owner, you sign your checks, you know where your money's going, and it's just like, she's been such a strong, positive presence for so many people for so long. And even when she was getting started, it's like she's had tidbits that if you listen, that it can help you stay strong through the tides as they change.
Right.
And the other one is Barack Obama.
Yes.
And I don't even think I need to say anything, but
Mic drop.
But yeah, exactly. It's just like when I think about those big famous people, but it's just like, these are people that it's just like, you made it through some hard stuff.
Yeah.
That those are the things that I hold on to. And then there's the grounded people in my life that are very real and relevant. And then, like I said, and then in between, in the courtyard, there's a ton of people that have helped change and shape me.
Well, Jamila, this has been such a fun conversation. Thank you for sharing not only this delicious wine and opening my eyes to so many different diverse wines and winemakers, but also all of your insights and leadership journey.
Thank you.
I know our listeners and viewers will appreciate that. And wish you absolutely all the best, especially with your new wine label. This is an exciting time for you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. This has been incredible.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of We the Game Changers, a production of the Seattle Sports Commission and with support from Metamora Productions. Like and subscribe to We the Game Changers on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. From the Seattle Sports Commission, I'm your host, Beth Knox, and here's to the power of sports.